Hi, this is Don Letts of Big Audio Dynamite, and you're watching The Week in Rock. Just play that music.
This week, we've got a trip to England on acid, a fast-track update on instant gratification, and a look at hot comic artist Bill Sienkiewicz. Hi, I'm Kurt Loder. Welcome to the Week in Rock. The big tour news this week belonged to Keith Richards, who kicked off his solo tour in Atlanta on November 23rd and has been racking up enthusiastic reviews ever since. USA Today caught his show in Washington, D.C. last Sunday and described Keith and his group, the Expensive Winos, as a hell-bent, heaven-sent garage band. The New York Times called his concert in Manhattan on Tuesday inspired rock and roll. But what about his singing, you ask? Well, one fan was quoted as saying Keith's voice was, quote, so awful, you've got to love it. We hooked up with Richards in New York, and as you're about to see, the solo life seems to be agreeing with him.
There's an amazing feeling of confidence with this band, and it's fun, you know. It was like more exciting than anything else. Like, at last, I managed to pull a gig together.
Yes, Keith Richards is finally back on the road after 6 years, and he's loving it. His new band is so naturally hot, he says he wasn't even nervous before the first gig in Atlanta last month.
I was unnaturally calm. I couldn't believe, you know, friends of mine are there and other people, and they're a bag of nerves, you know. Calm down, you know, have a drink.
He's full of shit. He was a nervous wreck.
Well, whatever. Nervous or not, Keith and company have been drawing massive reactions from their concert crowds.
You know, it's great when you go out to do a show and you don't see anybody sit down until, you know, you're back in the dressing room and you're the one sitting. It's the greatest.
Keith's core band is augmented on stage by Rolling Stones tour vet Bobby Keys on sax and ex-LaBelle singer Sarah Dash, who turns in a soaring rendition of Time Is On My Side. Other surprises in the show include a walloping version of Connection, a Keith penned Stones nugget from 1967. There's also a rollicking reprise of the Stones' first single, the Lennon-McCartney tune I Want to Be Your Man, a number suggested, much to Keith's delight, by drummer Steve Jordan.
I mean, to do Stones songs that the Stones have done without them, you know, without sort of trying to encroach on some of that hallowed turf, you know, is difficult. And that was just like, well, it's brilliant, Steve, brilliant. Here's 20 bucks.
The day after their New York show, Keith and the boys turned up at Tower Records for some feedback from the fans.
Keith Live is really awesome shows.
Keith Richards is the embodiment of rock and roll. Jagger needs Richards more than Richards needs Jagger.
Keith needs needs Keith, but Keith will definitely make it as a solo artist too, I think. I love them both, you know, all of them.
Richards' tour runs through December 17th, when it winds up at the Meadowlands Arena in New Jersey with a final gig on the eve of his 45th birthday. But will he really be ready to stop?
That's going to be the toughest thing. It's essential to have fun on stage, and if you are, then it's always a drag when it stops.
Keith and his band will play the Cleveland Music Hall on Wednesday, the Fox Theater in Detroit on Thursday, and Chicago's Aragon Ballroom next Saturday. Meanwhile, over in England, the biggest pop story of 1988 continues to be an epidemic of drugs, dancing, and general debauchery called acid house. Parents are scared by it, the police hate it, and the British tabloid press loves to hate it too. As for British kids, well, they think the whole acid house scare has been blown way out of proportion. Can England survive this latest craze? Can we make any sense of it? Let's find out. This is one video you won't be seeing on the BBC these days. It's the D-Mob hit We Call It Acid, and British broadcasting authorities, who banned the clip, figure it's nothing more than an advertisement for the psychedelic drugs that have fueled the current acid house explosion.
You turn on, you tune in, you drop out. Acid has that effect. Bassline be pumping, bodies rocking, people in the crowd, you hear them shout.
What's this acid house thing actually all about? Essentially, it consists of ingesting psychoactive drugs, either traditional LSD or the much more fashionable ecstasy, at strobe-lit, smoke-filled acid house clubs, often set up in cavernous warehouses or abandoned buildings, and dancing wildly all night long to acid house music.
So you've got this bass drum in your stomach, so you go, oh. You've got this smoke coming out your face, so you go, oh my God, and your eyes are starting to
starting to tear up, and then of course you're pouring with sweat because you're wringing wet because you're just on this throbbing mass on the dance floor. It's you know, it's an acquired taste.
A lot of working-class English kids apparently acquired this taste for wired nightlife on the sunny Spanish island of Ibiza, a favorite getaway resort for blue-collar British vacationers. There, in such in-crowd discos as Coos and Amnesia, they discovered the feel-good drug ecstasy and found themselves dancing the night away to hot tropical disco sounds from all over the world, a kind of musical mishmash that came to be called Balearic Beat.
There's no such real thing as a Balearic beat. Obviously, anything that sounds a bit foreign can be called a Balearic beat, or anything a bit off the wall that you would be frightened to play or wouldn't normally play. We've now found a label for it, which is Balearic beat.
British DJs working in the Ibiza clubs began bringing ecstasy back to England with them, and the drug was an immediate hit, as it already had been years earlier in this country. Developed in Germany in 1914, ecstasy, or methylene dioxymethamphetamine, promotes feelings of unbounded euphoria and sensuality. It flowered as a so-called love drug on the American club scene in the late 70s, despite medical warnings that ecstasy could cause brain and nerve damage and possibly lead to schizophrenia. In England, ecstasy fit right in with an already burgeoning disco scene centered on house music, the heavily produced black dance sound that originated in Chicago. With the introduction of ecstasy, this music began taking on a decidedly psychedelic tinge. By last spring, acid house had flowered into a full-blown craze in London, and by summer's end, the police had begun to take an interest. The crackdown came in the fall after one alleged LSD user took a 20-story leap out of a building to his death, and a young woman died in an acid house disco, although the actual cause of her death remains unknown. By November, police were busting acid house discos and parties right and left. London's Radio 1 and the Top of the Pops TV show had banned all acid house music, and major department stores had stopped selling the popular smiley face paraphernalia that had come to symbolize the acid house fad. Even more significantly, perhaps, acid house has by now become rather overexposed.
Now it's kind of like everywhere, and it's, you know, the daily newspapers all the time. It's becoming a bit of a bore, as these things do, you know, so it'll probably go quite quickly.
House music all night long. Say what? House music all night long. Say what? House music all night long.
And where will it go? Acid house proselytizers are hoping the phenomenon can now be translated to the States. In New York recently, a very English-style acid house club opened called Bonk. Are Americans really ready for the acid house experience?
Well, it's as conservative as hell out there, and I think just as soon as you say the word acid, it connotes a certain sense of freedom and rebellion.
We're bringing it in gently. We're going to mix it with the American house and bring it in, you know, like that way, so that people don't get too offended by it.
Offended? Anyone old enough to remember the drug-snurfling disco days of the mid-70s is unlikely to be outraged by acid house. Nor are the parents of today's club kids likely to be too alarmed. Not if they ever dropped acid themselves and cavorted to the crude dance beat of early hippie bands back in the 60s.
It's a bit like 60s. The dances are very like 60s. You know all those corny 60 films you used to see, and they're all going like that? That's what they're dancing like.
Will acid house take root in the States? Maybe. Maybe not.
I think it's going to be big and fast. It's going to go away like that. It's just a new sensation. People need something to do. People don't even know what acid house is.
I don't know what it is.
I have no idea. It's just psychedelic.
You can definitely dance to it, and it's got a style.
Whatever happens to acid house in America, over in the UK it was, without question, the hot pop story of the year. Alas, the year is nearly over. Not a moment too soon. We'll be back with God's Own Story, as pictured by Ralph Steadman, and the wild new comics of Bill Sienkiewicz when the Week in Rock continues.
Playing guitar and writing music.
Oh, that I'm alive.
I just got my own apartment, so I'm really happy about that.
Watching Gilligan's Island reruns, because I wake up kind of late. They crack me up.
Welcome back to the Week in Rock. Ever since he made his debut splash in this country back in 1971 as the illustrator of Hunter S. Thompson's Fear and Loathing dispatches in Rolling Stone magazine, Ralph Steadman has remained on the cutting edge of savage comic art. Back home in England recently, Steadman unveiled a show of his latest work, devoted with typical piety to the story of God and his wife. MTV Europe's Chris Salowich and Pip Dan paid Steadman a visit and sent us this report.
Ralph Steadman is a cartoonist whose themes span death and degradation, America the nation, and the world's ecological destruction. Steadman first came to prominence in 60s England as a savage political newspaper cartoonist, going on to become Hunter S. Thompson's crazy, cartoon-scribbling sidekick in many of Thompson's Rolling Stones articles. Recently, though, he's turned his sights to higher things. His latest enterprise, The Big I Am, is Steadman's own interpretation of the creation story. But what inspired such a potentially blasphemous project?
It came from a thought I had that if God had a wife before the beginning, what would they be doing? They'd be in a kind of nothingness, a black perfection, sort of purgatorial embrace, as it were. And their only real sin, you might call it their original sin, was to think. They suddenly felt boredom because they thought. If they'd stayed as they were, they'd have been in this black perfection, everything would have been okay, but they didn't, you see. They started giving birth to the planets in their millions. But they're all born dead, stillborn planets. And the only one, eventually, to be born alive was the Earth. And she, God's wife, died in childbirth. And in the process of dying and giving birth, she passed it over to God himself, since they were a kind of a oneness. And he felt it himself inside, but it was like feeling sick. So instead of giving birth to it as a normal mother would, he, being man, I suppose, regurgitated it. So Earth was born as a vomit.
Steadman has always courted controversy, but in exhibitions such as this, so soon after the protests from fundamentalist Christian factions against the movie The Last Temptation of Christ, means that he has to tread extra carefully on such hallowed ground. It appears that he shares director Martin Scorsese's opinion that all artistic endeavour is valid and nothing is sacred.
It seemed like a wonderful idea that God, that Christ could have had a fantastic love affair, just one in his life. Some beautiful thing. I mean, what a beautiful story.
Exactly.
And these people standing outside raving, I mean, are raving lunatics. Call themselves religious, and therefore they must be compassionate. Are they hell? All they want to do is persecute others. Feel that anything is possible, and anyone's belief is perfectly all right, provided, and I think this is my only proviso, it's not a belief to cause pain to another. That's simply all it is. We all have a right to live here. And here's my lesson for today.
The great Ralph Steadman. In art news closer to home, star cartoonist Bill Sienkiewicz is stirring up another big buzz on the comic book scene with his latest creation, Stray Toasters. Sienkiewicz believes that comics are now sophisticated enough to take on such subjects as AIDS and even the CIA, and his own current work makes a very persuasive case. One of the brightest lights in the new comics movement, Bill Sienkiewicz first made his mark in 1986 as the artist behind Elektra Assassin. He handles both story and art in his latest series, Stray Toasters, one of the most bizarre comics on the market right now.
And it's also basically a metaphor for people, children, who are appliances to be used and discarded when they really don't warm up and perform like they're supposed to. It's sort of my version of like Donna Reed meets David Lynch, meets Sigmund Freud, meets Carl Jung, meets Nietzsche, and sort of like, Saturday morning cartoons shot through at about Mach 5 through Psycho Ward.
Sienkiewicz continues to break the traditional mold with Strip AIDS USA, a new collection of cartoon art dealing with AIDS, and Brought to Light, a provocative study of 30 years of CIA misadventures.
The CIA has basically had a hand in the bastardization of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, all in the name of America.
I don't know what it is I like it, but I like it a lot.
I want rage. I want a strong reaction. The worst thing, I think, for any artist is to have an apathetic reaction. The response we got from over 120 American artists and writers was terrific, and was an incredible show of solidarity for a really important cause. And the benefits go for AIDS research. I think it also shows that comics, in one respect, aren't just for kids, that they can handle something that's a social issue. We haven't even touched the limits, I think, of what comics can reach.
Okay, and one final art note, a life-size wax statue of Michael Dukakis that went on display at Madame Tussauds Wax Museum in London on October 31st, right next to a similar replica of George Bush, has just become the shortest-lived exhibit in the museum's 218-year history. Next Friday, the luckless Duke will be melted back down into an anonymous puddle of wax. The Bush figure, of course, will remain, at least for the time being. We'll be back with news on how to bootleg a Metallica concert and a look at the nuttiest new film of the holiday season when the Week in Rock continues.
Al Sharpton, Reverend Al Sharpton, that's it. Bert Convy, by far. Probably Donahue. Yeah, I don't like him. Yeah. More than Downey, too. He's loud, too loud, you know.
Marv Albert.
David Letterman.
Welcome back to the Week in Rock. You know, we can't always get what we want, but when we can, we want it right now. The possibilities for instant gratification of even our most trivial whims have never been more numerous. Our man on the fast track front, Stu Cohen, has been looking into this lately, and he's got a report for us. Stu?
Look, I'm sorry. We just don't have a crew going out on the 8th. Okay, look, just hang on a second, all right? Hi, okay. Kurt, I just can't deal with this right now. Roll the tape.
Everybody rushes around all day long, but who really gets anything done?
Job and family use up an extraordinary proportion of one's time. So any time one can save becomes a tremendous value.
Those instant cash machines, they caused a revolution. I mean, who wants to wait in line for a human bank teller?
Remember how long that used to take? 20 minutes, 25 minutes?
I never go to a bank during banking hours. But the best thing is that it's convenient, and it's no cost to me.
First, it absolutely, positively had to get there overnight. But now, even that's not fast enough. So enter the fax machine. 10 million Americans use these things every day, sending everything from legal documents to press releases over phone lines all over the world. And fast-track yuppies have found an even more practical use for their office fax machine. I can't believe I'm actually faxing my lunch order.
Fellas, in order, pastrami on rye.
New York's 2nd Avenue Deli installed its fax machine just a couple of weeks ago, and it seems to be a success. Hey, what about my lunch?
Stuart Cohen from MTV. I faxed an order before. Got it?
2 hot dogs with mustard,
ready?
strawberry and rye with mustard, mushroom ball of soup, Knish, a can of Coke, and Dr. Brown's black cherry.
You got it all. How much is that?
$22. It saves people being put on hold. It saves people running for a pencil, running for a carbon paper, running here. Boom, they have it. And I think it'll just grow and grow.
Matter of fact, the lady that sent this fax in wanted me to know exactly what kind of signs they make.
Radio stations are even getting song requests by fax these days.
You know, when people aren't directly on the phone with you, sometimes they can get intimidated speaking directly, especially to an air personality, whereas with the fax, they can kind of contact you safely. It's like writing a letter.
Today, it's instant cash and fax machines. Who knows what or where we'll be tomorrow?
Michael, in a minute. Look, I don't understand why we should shoot these guys like you're... What? Really? We gotta go all the way to Nebraska for this?
And tapes.
Tapes. Yeah, it's really crazy here. Hang on a second. Sensory overload. Back to you, Kurt.
Thanks, Stu. Speaking of gratification, what could be more fulfilling for hardcore rock fans than the opportunity to legally tape entire concerts by their favorite bands without getting busted? The Grateful Dead have encouraged this practice at their shows for years, and now another band, Metallica, is trying it too. Here's the story.
When Metallica performed at the Chicago Pavilion recently, the arena was jam-packed with fans, 200 of whom were there to work. They were taping Metallica's concert with Metallica's blessings.
What are you going to do about it? It's there, and so it's like if you confront it and deal with it on a, on some sort of level instead of like trying to pretend that it doesn't go on.
Metallica estimates there are at least 70 bootleg albums on the market. And by setting aside a section for tapers, there might be fewer of these unauthorized recordings around.
I'm probably just giving some friends of mine.
Keep it for my personal use.
I'm gonna make a bunch of copies and sell them.
Hey, Wait a minute, that's illegal.
Who cares?
Oh well, band members have heard quite a few of these bootlegs, and well, they aren't too impressed.
Kirk says some really dodgy ones have like 2 Metallica songs and then demo tapes from local bands on side 2 or something.
Yeah. And they charge like $30 for these albums.
Metallica will have taper sections for a couple more of its U.S. shows, but for now, it's just an experiment.
What we are not aware of is that, 95% of the people on this platform will be the bootleggers. Yeah. But we are trying.
If you, too, would like to tape a Metallica concert, the group invites you to do so at its shows in Long Beach, California on Wednesday and Thursday, and in San Francisco next Sunday, December 11th. And now a quick look at what may be the most whacked-out movie of the current Christmas season, The Naked Gun. It's the latest production from Zucker Abrams Zucker, the comedy team that previously gave us Airplane, and it's based on their short-lived and now classic TV series, Police Squad. Leslie Nielsen stars as a screw-loose cop on a murder case. Priscilla Presley plays a shady babe, and before long, among many other things, they fall in love.
Same old story. Boy finds girl, boy loses girl, girl finds boy. Boy forgets girl, boy remembers girl. And girl dies in a tragic blimp accident over the Orange Bowl on New Year's Day.
But somewhere along the line, their love goes wrong.
Frank, what's wrong?
A lot of things, sweetie pie. A little meeting that turned into a peekaboo session with Bill. It's all set up by someone who's been playing me like a violin at the annual SAPS convention.
Funny face. I don't know what you're talking about.
My stockyard meeting, Butterwings. Or don't you remember setting that up?
But Mr. Ludwig said you call a meeting off. Believe me,
Pop me another one, Snooky Lumps.
Frank, it's the truth.
It's true what they say. Cops and women don't mix. It's like eating a spoonful of Drano. Sure, it'll clean you out, but it'll leave you hollow inside. Too bad, Sugar Puff. Take care of yourself, baby. By the way, I faked every orgasm.
The Naked Gun is a very wild and very crazy film. And what's Leslie Nielsen doing back in the role of nutcase cop Frank Drebin?
First question.
We'll just let that pass. The Naked Gun is open all around the country this weekend, and that about does it for this edition of the Week in Rock. We'll be back next week with Debbie Gibson, Bon Jovi, and Richard Gere, Philip Glass, and a bunch of Tibetan monks. We'll see you then.